welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
If you guys know me, and I'm looking at a couple people who know me from way back when, I'm a very emotional person. Like, I cry every single day, and I actually had a good cry this morning because I had the realization that my Dharma talk today was 100% from my heart. When I wrote this yesterday, I cried the entire time I wrote it. But for me, when I'm that in touch with my emotions, I feel like I say the most authentic stuff, you know? So I also want to encourage you, unless you would like to keep your eyes open, I'd like to encourage you to close your eyes for this Dharma talk. And I'll tell you why. There's a statistic that 40% of our mental processing and the way we can listen and be aware of our surroundings comes through our vision. So when our eyes are closed, we can hear with different senses, such as our heart and things like that. Because this is a pretty tender piece, I'd like to ask you to close your eyes. Find yourself settled in your seat. On your next exhale, I want you to feel yourself heavier, feel yourself softer. On your next exhale, I want you to feel as your shoulders drop down and away from your ears and your neck grows just a little bit. I wrote this Dharma talk as it started as a letter to my children, and it kind of took on a life of its own. I want to talk this morning about impermanence. When we hear the word impermanence, what comes to mind? First, when we hear the word impermanence, we hear the word permanent. And when I think of permanent, I think of something that is fixed and stable and unchanging and forever, like it never goes away. So impermanence must mean that it's not fixed, that it's not stable, that it is changing, and that it is not forever, meaning that one day it will no longer be in existence. So we can easily know this through knowing and seeing death. Death is the great reminder of impermanence. Death smacks us in the face and says, yes, remember, you will not be here forever. But then I start to wonder, when we say you will not be here, what does that mean? Who is this you? What parts of you make you? And when we say here, where is this here? What is this here that we are speaking of? Impermanence makes us sad. At least it makes me sad. I remember I once told Sergio, when I was in a very emotional sort of place and I was trying to understand impermanence, I said, Sergio, how am I supposed to hear a baby's laughter and not be deeply affected by its joyful sound? How am I to see the most brightly vivid sunset and not cry because I know that I'm looking at the face of God? How am I to see us helping one another and not be moved and deeply in awe? How am I to see pain and not be compelled to hold it? How am I to know of Charlie Kirk's death and not first think about his young daughters as their tears fall? How am I to listen to the news and not turn it off instead? How am I to listen to music and not want to dance with complete abandon? How am I to know you and not love you? How am I to watch kids swinging as high as they can on a playground swing set and not smile with tears in my eyes as if I'm watching my own children? How am I to see the clouds and remember that the sun is right on the other side? How am I to feel great joy for the experience of life and not be devastated that one day it will end? Just the thought of being ripped away from such beauty. How am I not grieving the realization that me and my best friend cannot go to each other's funeral? How am I supposed to be hurt by someone and trust them the next day? How am I to know that my cousin died and her dad, my uncle, my dad's little brother, would die shortly thereafter because his body couldn't live without his daughter? How am I to hear the Dharma and not hear my heart shouting hallelujah? How am I to be Buddhist and constantly talking to God? How am I to watch a dog running in circles chasing his tail and not desire his freedom? How am I to watch the thunderstorm outside my window and not feel it as the power of the universe? How can I talk when my words can't figure out how to rise through my throat because I choke them down with the fear of judgment of how they might sound when they exit my mouth? How can my fingers type these words right now while shaking with emotions at the same time? How am I to breathe when I never learned how? How am I supposed to trust the government when I remember stories of the Jim Crow era? How am I not to be inspired when I remember Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech? How am I to trust myself when all I've ever heard is my own voice telling me that I really don't know shit? Impermanence. Impermanence is how. Impermanence is the invisible hand that says to me, come on, girl, I got you. Just keep taking that next breath. Keep letting the exhale remind you that your death is coming soon. Keep remembering that one day you will run out of breath and you will not be able to inhale into this very body. Keep remembering that even this joyous inhale will not always be joyous and it will not always be yours. But when my 11-year-old says that he is scared of death and holds me around my neck like this will be our last hug, how am I supposed to end that very embrace? What do I say when he asks what happens after death? Do I tell him that all things are temporary and illusory in nature? Hell, I don't even know what that means. I mean, not in a way that I can explain to an 11-year-old. So instead, I sidestep and say things like, dude, I ain't going nowhere today. So let's just be right here, right now. And he accepts that answer, but I don't. And then I ruminate and I obsess over how I should have explained it. And then I just ruminate forever. Or actually, I guess I just ruminate temporarily. I eventually forget that I was even trying to find a better way to explain it to him. So then death and its unexplainability, or maybe just its difficulty in translating it into child language, just leaves it hanging in the air of no answers. And then that makes me feel angry at death, because as a writer and a poet, I should be able to string together the right words to settle his heart, not with the surety that death won't arrive, but with some degree of comfort so that he can go to sleep without worrying whether or not I will open my locked bedroom door in the morning. So when he knocks, I jump up out of the bed to reassure him that I woke up just like yesterday and the days before. How do I prepare him for the day when he knocks and I don't answer? I don't know that I can. Impermanence is a hard one. I struggle with impermanence so easily, which is why I chose to give this Dharma talk today. Because I tend to be a person that only knows how to wrestle with the difficult by diving in with the determination of figuring it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't, just like impermanence. So then the question becomes, how do I stay planted on this earthly ground while I see myself sliding towards greater deterioration and eventually to be sucked down into the drain of death that I had been circling the whole entire time? Because I don't think drains work like something is circling the drain and then it just magically jumps out of the circle, kind of like double Dutch jump rope, contained within something and then just randomly ejected out. I mean, I guess it's possible to refuse being stuck, but it's not possible to escape life, to find another exit other than death. We all enter and exit the same door, one way in, one way out, like one-way traffic. And we got to keep moving with the flow of traffic. Otherwise, we'll create a bottleneck situation and the risk for an accident increases. Just like when you go to the roller skating rink and you got to keep moving forward to keep the flow right. Because if one of us falls, we all fall. And I think this is a good way for us to think about impermanence and how it applies to all things. Thich Nhat Hanh encourages us to practice what he calls saying hi and then bye. The way that I practice this is simply when I am around other humans, be it in a grocery store or in a gas station, in my mind and with the smile on my face, I just say hi. And then when we pass each other and they are no longer in my sight, I say quietly in my mind, goodbye. And I do that over and over and over and over again to every human that I see and I pass and that I can remember to do this with. But I've even expanded this practice to even inanimate things. So if I walk towards my bookshelf, I say, hello, bookshelf. I walk away from my bookshelf and I say quietly, goodbye, bookshelf, over and over again, every day, all day, as much as I can possibly remember. And I really like this practice because it feels like it can help us become more aware of how precious life is, this precious human birth, like we talked about last week. And I want to finish this Dharma talk by listing some of the precious temporary experiences that we can experience today and moving forward. 1, a baby's laughter. 2, brightly vivid sunsets. 3, watching us help one another. 4, willingness to see pain and become compelled to help hold it. 5, remembering the tears of children of murdered, lost, and mistaken parents. 6, listening to the news and having the ability and the freedom to turn it off. Precious temporary experiences. 7, the joy of listening to music and letting it put you on your feet to dance. 8, knowing you and loving you. 9, watching kids on the school playground swinging as high as they can and watching a huge smile appear on my face. 10, seeing the clouds, but remembering the sun. 11, feeling great joy for this very moment, not the next one, not the last one, this one, right here, right now, this very inhale, this very exhale. 12, becoming deeply aware of and accepting of death, my death, your death, the death of my children, the death of your children, and their future children, my dog, your cat, my little sister who's a police officer, my big and strong brother who is an entrepreneur, his big and strong teenage sons, my handsome nephews, 13, realizing that I'm either going to hold my best friend's children at her funeral or she will hold mine at mine. Precious temporary experiences. 14, the strength that we have after being hurt by someone and having the ability to try to trust them the next day. 15, the beauty in the death of my cousin that forced her dad to want to join her. 16, the awareness that my dad walked his little brother home with daily phone calls to the hospice home. Even after my uncle could only moan, my dad stayed with him until he was gone. And 17, the power and the amazing bravery that my dad showed me, because he knew himself well enough to know that sitting in the back of the church is where his tears would be protected. 18, the sacred honor in being able to hear the Dharma and shout, hallelujah. 19, the flexibility to be a Buddhist and still talk to God every day. 20, how fun it is to watch a dog running in circles chasing his tail without a care in the world. 21, feeling the thunderstorm outside of my window and listening to the voice of the universe. 22, having words that have learned how to rise through my throat, even when sometimes I still choke. 23, being terrified of being judged and choosing authenticity anyway. 24, noticing right now that those earlier shaky fingers and dripping wet face have now steadied and dried with the beauty of how this Dharma talk is taking shape. 25, remembering that I once took a first breath without needing to be taught, and learning right now how to take my last. 26, learning how to protect myself with deep knowledge that my trust or lack thereof in this government has only pushed me closer to the Dharma and to my practice and to my ancestors and to my understanding when my dad tells me stories of colored only drinking fountains and how he felt when John F. Kennedy was assassinated and how his 10-year-old self left at home while his mother, who had 8 other children besides him, had to go to work. My dad said he ran to the kitchen to grab a knife out of the drawer because the government now felt dangerous. Our ability to be open and inspired when we remember and study the change makers and the revolutionaries of the past and the current day. 28, to have ears that will listen to Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream speech tomorrow, as that is the tradition in my home with my boys, so that they can have their own dreams. 29, this continuous learning of how to trust ourselves, even when we may be more familiar with that negative inner voice, but listen for it to tell you to stay humble as you grow, knowing that there will always be a tree taller than you. And 30, being so grateful for the message that Impermanence shares, that this won't last because nothing does. Everything we have to hold with a very tender palm and a gentle appreciation. I have a practice right now where if I see something beautiful, I don't instantly reach for my phone to take a picture of it, but instead, I try to experience it right then and there. I want us to learn how to experience beauty in this moment, the only one that is here and promised, because there is really only one moment, and it is the one that you are living right now. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Bran Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.